So if what's most important to you is like finding the right outlets, I have a couple of tips and suggestions I just wanted to like throw out there. So Twitter is the quickest and the easiest way to tap into a community of writers and editors. Almost every young music journalist that I know got their start through Twitter, a lot of times just by like hounding editors or like, not like hounding them, but like sharing their, ideas, sharing their conversations. Cause I feel like music journalism compared to like a lot of other sort of areas of journalism is a area where people want to have discussions, right? So like they want to hear what you have to say about the new Beyonce album. So jump in there and like tell them, right? They want to hear what you have to say about the, what Kanye West is doing or what Solange is doing or what, Taylor Swift is doing. And they don't always want to hear this, the same conversations from the people that they always talk to all the time. And so establishing those kind of like connections for a lot of like writers that I know has been a really great way for them to kind of get like a leg in. Oftentimes you start having these conversations online and they're like, well, wait a minute, like, why don't you like write something 500 words for me about that? And then like, they'll just like commission it in that way. It's also a really good way because, I would say probably like 60 to 75% of like editors now are leaving their contact information like right on their Twitter page, right? So you're like, how do I get in touch with the editor at Noisy? Oh, right. He's on Twitter and there's his email address right there. And he's like, slide into my DMs, tell me why like the new Drake album sucks and I'll pay you $300 to write about it, right? So that's the kind of stuff that they're like in particular like looking for because they are really interested in who's gonna like break through, who's gonna, who has the most kind of just like interesting, provocative, whatever kind of thing to say that is going to make a splash.
I would assume there are more opportunities online than there are in print.
Yeah, print is, because think of it in like this way that like, most writing online, oftentimes has like a cap. And so, you might be writing like a long form piece for the internet, but you're maybe only going to get paid like $600 or $800 for it. But like for print, you could be getting paid like anywhere from 50 cents to like $1 to $2 to $3, per word. So it's much harder to get into those worlds. And also the print world is very much, dominated by people who have been doing it for a long, long, long time. So they really want you to like prove your bona fides and X, Y, and Z versus, the online world where so much content is being produced on a regular basis. And, that they want to see what's new, what's fresh, what's different, what's interesting. But then also too, so much of, music is groundbreaking and is being distributed and shared on a variety of different platforms. So it just makes sense for it to be happening and being written for the internet because, if you're trying to explain some like random musician who only posts like minute-long clips on their like Instagram page, like that's not going to translate to like a magazine, right? But you could embed all of that stuff into like a post that you're doing on like rollingstone.com. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and as I said before, like that's the internet is for me was, even though I had so much experience in the print world as an intern, the internet is where I actually kind of really got my career going. So a couple of pages that I really like that offer, do a lot of like reblogging, retweeting X, Y, and Z, writers of color, disabled writers, doing a search in general, just for call for pitches. Almost every editor is like, I'm doing a call for pitches or I'm looking for pitches about. So if you just literally search for like call for pitches or look for pitches or looking for pitches, you will oftentimes find a lot of editors in that capacity. And then if you're sort of like looking for like, who is the person who I want to talk to at this place, almost always, all the time, if you just like do a search for the name of the publication plus like editor or writer, you will be able to find them. I'm found that way all the time, and I always forget that that's how people like find my information. I'm like, how did you? And then it's like, you have it out there, as everyone does. So silly. So Facebook is also a really good source, even though I know people hate Facebook and it's really evil. But there are a number of different places on Facebook, especially if you are a woman or you are trans or non-binary, that are out there, like the binders and things like that. So that's really not, but there's a lot of like writing groups and things like that that are available on Facebook as well. And oftentimes people are posting like jobs there. They're posting that they're looking for, writers and pitches and things like that. I've written a lot of pieces just from seeing like posts like that in some of the writing communities that I'm in, that these people are not, for example, like they're not necessarily putting on Twitter, because they know on Twitter it'll get retweeted like 2,000 times, and they'll have like, their DMs are just clogged, or like their email inbox is clogged. So oftentimes they'll like post it in these smaller groups that maybe only have like 2,000 people in them, and then from there, like they're like, okay, like I get a more curated list of what I'm actually like looking for. And then newsletters are also really great as well. There are a lot of really awesome newsletters, most of them that are free, that are like posting tons about, kind of gathering all those open calls for pitches that were like on Twitter, that were on Facebook, that were in other places, and then like putting them all in one place. So if you're like, I don't want to like spend all this time like searching for this stuff, and I just want someone to like get it all for me, a lot of newsletters that are out there are really good for that. Some that I really like, there's one called 10 Opportunities and a Picture of My Dog. It's really cute. There's one called The 30, which usually features like an interview with a media personality, and then they just like literally will list like 50 new like job openings, or like calls for pitches or things like that. Opportunities of the Week is another one. It's a paid one, but you only have to pay her, I think, like $2 a month through like Patreon. But she posts everything from like fellowships and grants. So if you're like working on a story, but you're like, this requires me to travel, it requires me to like I need like a month off, or I need whatever, like, she is gathering all those like, information about that for like journalists and whatnot, which so many people, it amazes me, they don't know anything about this, right? So they're just like, I'm going to accept the $300 for this story. It's like, no, apply for a grant, and then, get like an extra like $2,000 to like work on and like report this story. Like I had one of my exes, like he was working on a story about like the death penalty, and he found like, he got like a grant for $25,000. So he was able to, he had been like a doorman before at like a bar, and he was able to like stop doing that for a good like, 3-4 months. So then he could like do this like reporting, going down to like different like, state prisons and whatnot, stuff like that. So those grants they're absolutely out there, and oftentimes they're struggling to find people to apply for them, because a lot of those places are like led by people who do not know how to like use the internet very well. Or they have like, the organization has like 50 followers on like Twitter or something like that. And so they're like, why isn't anyone applying? So there's a lot of newsletters that are good for reporting that kind of information. And I find that Opportunities of the Week is a really good one for that. Dream of Travel Writing, which it sounds like it's only about travel writing, but they also like post like a whole thing about all these other ones. Other job opportunities and whatnot is really great. Winning Writers is really good for if you want a mix of contests, grants, and fellowships. And then Morning Coffee is also a really great one for jobs or for gigs as well. My personal favorite is called Study Hall. Study Hall is began as a co-working space in Brooklyn. I think they don't even have the co-working space anymore, but they are specifically targeted towards freelance writers, created by freelance writers. They have different tiers, and if you are a person of color, you can pay as low as like $2 to $3 per month to get access to all of their resources. Their resources include guides that are coming specifically from different types of publications, media brands, outlets, things like that. They're getting like the head of like they're getting like Corey Sika from the New York Times Styles section, like writing like a 5-page guide to what they're looking for, and every single New York Times Styles editor right there, like they're doing that kind of stuff. So you're like, how do I break into the New York Times? Study Hall is like getting places to actually provide that kind of information for you. guides to how to break into the Atlantic, how to break into Rolling Stone, how to break into, New York Magazine, all these different types of places, how to break into like Pitchfork, etc. They have tons of really great like chat rooms and like Slacks. So if you want to, just sort of shoot the shit with other people who are like you, who are trying to like figure out their way in the journalism world, it's really great for like having those kind of conversations. They do 2 weekly newsletters. One is just on state of the media industry. The other is just for like opportunities. So they again are posting job calls, calls for pitches, fellowships and grants, and other opportunities like that. They also are very much about union organizing, and they have a full-time union organizer who is trying to start like a more succinct national like freelancers union, and they're doing a lot of work in terms of like reporting on like the union organizing that's happening at different media publications right now. As I'm sure you've heard about like the demise of like Deadspin this week, that was kind of like tied to a lot of like stuff like that. And then they have like they also have a database of nearly every publication that's out there online and print, the editors that are like working there, their contact email addresses, their pay rates, and what they're looking for. So if you were like, I want to write this really crazy, amazing, cool, blah, blah, blah thing, and I don't know who to like pitch it to, if you were part of this, you could go into their database and literally just like, look through what they have. And maybe your first instinct was to be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna like pitch this at Complex. But then you see like Complex like underpays people, which they do. And so then instead you're like, oh, wait a minute, like, Rolling Stone is paying like twice as much and it's just for like, blah, blah, blah. Well, okay, I'll like try to like pitch it at Rolling Stone. And then if that doesn't work, and then I'll maybe try like Complex, or I'll try like whatever other place. So they're my personal favorite. Just across the board, they kind of have everything that you could ever want.